Maybe. Okay, so previously we stopped at joining. We say that we can join or we can collect data from more than one table. For example, sometimes we may have students and their marks. So we may not need to put these two different entities in the same table. But because it may cause redundancy and data inconsistency, we'll discuss these things later, but that's what it can cause. So what do? We make sure that we record data in the right table. For example, marks, that's a different entity, and students is a different entity. So if you put the marks and students in the same table, it can bring a problem. Why? Because a student has a first name, has a last name, has a, for example, has date of birth. But marks has the mark as the value, maybe, and the exam. So if you put these in the same table, you may find that there is a problem. So what do you need to do? We may need to do what to separate them, okay? So because of separating them, so you'll find that the tables, they are separated but they are related. So students, we put them in a separate table because they have same structure of data, and marks, we put them also in a different table because they have same structures of data. So these two different entities, the sheep and the goat, they also have relationship because it is a student who makes the exam, and who does the exam and he gets the mark. So these marks are allocated to a student, but every student has his own mark now, and every mark has got its own student. So that relationship of mark and a student, we must have a way how we can connect these two relationships. So that's when you come to the IDs and the primary keys. Like a student must have an ID that we will use to uniquely identify this student from the table of students. We normally call that a primary key. Okay, we normally call it a primary key. Primary key is a value, is a property that we can use to uniquely identify an element or a row in a table. So if you're in a school, you always have your ID. So that ID will help us to identify that so and so, or to identify that it is a specific person, and you'll have this ID alone in the entire school. So likewise to rows in a table, they always have unique IDs to make sure that, to give us ability to identify them in a database. So a mark will have its ID of you'll have its own ID, until each mark will also have the ID of a student who did it. Okay, a mark will have the ID of a student who did that exam to get that mark, because if the mark does not have an ID of a student, then we cannot know who did that mark, because in a separate table and it's not allocated to someone. So to allocate this mark, we give it we give it the owner, or the one who created the mark, the one who scored this mark. So how do we do that? We give that mark the ID owner, or the ID of that, or the owner of that ID. They put in a row. And also on the other side, consequently, then the ID that ID must exist in a table of the student. So we will need a time where we need the marks of a student and the student information. For example, we want to create a report card, then you need to get the marks of this student. So how shall we know that these particular marks are for these particular students? Then we go back again to the portal ID. We use the mark, the ID of a student to record the mark of a student. So we need to now to select data from two tables, because Student is having a separate table, and the mark has a separate table. So that's why you see we are selecting from more than one table. Select from what? From marks. Then we put inner join. Inner join means that we are going to select from what? From different table, and we're going to use all the rows should be included. Inner join students. Then after doing that, then we say, hey, to identify the marks of this particular student, you should use this particular ID. For example, here in this marks.id means that an ID in a marks table, and this students.id, it means that an ID in a what? In a students table. So we are relating the student ID and the mark ID to be equal, to say that for us to give us the result, you must allocate the ID of this mark to the what? To the student. So these two, if they match, then the table will give us the result, or as one row. So by doing that, we will have been able to select related data from two separate tables, just like the one I showed you here. This one is called what? Students and mark. Let me see which table I was using. SQL. It is here. Okay. This is SQL table, and they're having two entities. We're having marks here. In fact, we're supposed to add student ID, not the ID. We are supposed to add the student ID. I forget that, in fact. Okay, but I use the ID, no problem. And then you have what? The students. Okay, so these students, we cannot put them in the same table. Why? Because the structure of a student information is not the same as the structure of a what? Of a marks information. But it is a student who does what? Who does the exams, who to score the mark. So we use the join to make the relationship between these two tables to return for us the results. So previously we practiced the inner join. So to discuss about inner join, the inner join, the keyword that select records that have matching for both. So the inner join will select, this is the diagram for inner join, to select all the records from this table and this table, and to return the results in multiple into specified tables. That is what we call inner join. So you have left join. So left join, it will bring the result. The left join keyword returns the record from the left table and the matched records from the table. From the table 2. Okay. It will return records that are matching in this table and on the other side. That is what we call the left join. It will return the columns that are both in this side and in this side. But the inner join will return the entire thing. Then the left join will return only the columns in in the other side. To do that, let me first run this and I show you what it means. So we are having, if we create here the SQL and run this, can you see everything has been returned? We are having the ID, the mark, the student, the final mid mark, final mark, and then the comment, then the ID. So the inner join, it has joined everything inside the what? Inside the tables. You see, it has joined things from the marks and the what and those of the left mark. And how to write inner join? Just say inner join, and then you specify the table, and then you specify the ID that it should be used to arrange these things, or to link the two, because every mark should be assigned to a particular student. So to give this rule, you say that the column of marks ID, it should be equal to the what? To the column of marks student for these particular rows to be joined. Otherwise, if you don't do this, then they will form what we call a Cartesian product. That will look at it. I will discuss about it later. I hope at this moment we are together. Now let us look at what is meant by what? By left join. So left join, it will work the same, but the difference is okay. So here, instead of doing what, instead of putting inner join, just put left join. So here the difference is it will return only the elements that are having same name with this one, and they are just only from the left table. And when you say left table, it is this one. So it will only return this one on the left hand side, or the column in the left hand side. So it is returning the column from both. This is the first table and this is the second table, and they've been linked together. But you can see the ID here is the same as the ID here, and the ID here is the same as ID here. And we did that rule by setting it here. Here it is where we set it from. We say that we'll use the what? The IDs to allocate a particular student. So let me run this again. I'm using the left join. So you can see the left join. I use left join though. Mid, final, there's no difference. I have the left join. What's the difference? So let me see. Let me put inner join. Inner join stays the same. And then the left join, I was expecting it to bring only the values of the left table. Or maybe I'm having a problem where I'm writing the way I'm writing it. Left join, it's supposed to be it's supposed to bring the values from the what? From the left table. So I don't know why it is bringing all, but that's not a serious issue. So right join, it is supposed also to bring the data from the what? From the right hand side table. So come here to SQL and then put here right join. Oh yeah, you see it has brought everything, but those values which are having the missing, it has created that Cartesian product. I mean, the values that are having the missing, it has brought all the values. Okay, I can explain this. It has brought all the values from the right hand side, but those values which are not having marks. For example, we have students, but there might be students who did not do any exam. Okay, so you can see this student Joan. Joan had no any exam, and Joy had no any mark. They'd have no any mark. So the right join mean that it should return all the rights, and those who don't have any mark or they don't have any value on the left hand, they should be put null. Okay, so you see it returned all the values. For example, John had two marks. Had 2 marks. 2 marks. I don't know how I should say it. He was having the first mark and the second mark. He had two results, right? But Joan did not have any result. That's why on the left hand side, on his table of left hand side, is done what? We return only null null. But it makes sure that all the things on the right hand side, like the way I said, on the right hand side, all of them are what? Are returned. That is the meaning of right join. So left join, in case there is a mark that has no owner, it will do what? It will return that mark, but with a what? With a null. So you see, this is the what? This is the right join. Right join, it will return all the people, those who are having double, but it makes sure that it return all of them. Those who don't have, it gives them null in their side of what? Of marks. But also, if we go to what? To left join, to left, that was in a right join. So if we go to left join, you see left join, every mark has got the owner. That's why we're not seeing any what? We are not seeing any null. Why? It has represented all the marks, and these marks, they got the owner. So what it makes sure that all of them, they are well presented. There's no any mark which was left with no owner, then it will not go ahead and present. That was the right join. Why? Because all the marks are assigned to the what? To the owner. But assume that you're having like a mark which does not have an owner. Let me insert one more mark here. Okay. So, for example, ID 44. We don't have a student who is having ID 44. Maybe he's having 45 marks. Maybe. Excellent. Okay. So I go ahead and save it, and then I come and run this. Now we are pretty sure that there is no student with what? With this mark. Let us run the SQL. Can you see? Can you see, members, that? You see? It has returned all those ones on the what? On the right hand side. I mean on the left hand side. But those one on the left hand side, because we said left, but did not have any mark, they have been given null on the what? On the right hand side. Did you understand? Hamza, do you understand? The inner and the right? I mean the left and the right?
Yes.
The left, you understood, right?
Yes.
Very good. Then for the inner, it will only care only those which are having the matching. Those who don't have matching, it will ignore them. You see, inner join, it just care about those who are doing that, who have the match. Those who don't have match, they are ignored. So the full outer join return the records when there is a match in the left table or in the right table records. Full join potentially return large results sets, and full join. Okay, the full outer join and full join are the same. Almost they're the same. Also, even the inner join is almost what? Almost the same. It returns all of them. It returns all of them. So if I come here, I can as well run the what? The full join by doing like this. Marks. Then I put full join. No. I have some syntax error. Full outer join. Is that outer? Select specific columns from specific table, and then full outer join, and then you put a condition. We'll leave this one the way it is. Join union group by, we'll skip to group by. Okay, those joins I'll show you how we can navigate through them. Okay, so those were the joins. Now we proceed to what? To group by. Sometimes we may not need duplicates of data. Okay, Sometimes we may not need duplicate of data. So group by, we use it to group rows that have the same values. Okay, that have same values. For example, if you want to count a certain number of students, we may use the group by. Okay, so this group by have also been complemented with other aggregate functions such as counting, such as maximum and minimum and the sum and the average. These have also been used to do what? To perform the same tasks. But in simple terms, we use group by to group elements and not form what? Not to form duplicates. For example, I want to select for example, I want to select only students, and I want to group them what? I don't want to get like a student which I mean, okay, for example, I want to count all the male students. Yeah, if I want to count all the male students, so we'll use group by not to make these students not to repeat themselves. I mean, to not to count one more than one, not to count each student more than one time. Also, we use this group by to when we don't want duplicated results. And this is the syntax. For example, you can see here, select, then we specify the column that you're selecting, and then we give the reason. I mean, we give the table that you're selecting from, then you give a condition, and then you give a group by columns. Now we can just do like this. Save 19 SQL group by. So we can just say select from marks. Okay, select from what? Students. Okay, so if we want to see how all the genders that we have, okay, for example, okay, let us say select gender from what? From student. For example, if we do like this and then we come and run this one, select gender from what? From student. What does it say? Don't you have gender? Or you have sex? Okay. Select sex from what? From student. So you can see we're having, can you see members? We're having all these results. Male, female, male, female. So we're having male, female, female, female. Those are the genders that we have. So if we go here to records, you see you're having male, female, male, female, male, female, something like that. So that's when we select. If I select only gender, you'll see male, female, then female, female, female. Now, what if we don't want a repetition of data? We want just a group of data. So to do that, we go ahead and do what? And give a condition, group by, and then you specify the column that you want to group by with. So if I say group by gender, so it will make sure that there is no gender that is being repeated more than one time. It is 6. Okay. You can see you're having male, and then once it says male, then it will never repeat that male again, and then go to female, and once it's found female, it will not allow again that female to exist. So that's when we use what? We use group by. We use it to do what? To group columns. Maybe we may have, for example, we may have a table with so many people from different countries. So we want to count the number of people using the group. So we use that group from particular country. You use that group to first know, group by to first know the country that are so far existing in in your table without repeating them. So we use just group by to do what? To group data in simple terms. Okay, we use group by to group data in simple terms. So you can also sort. For example, assume that I selected all. Assume that I selected all the information, and then I let a group by. Then you see, it brought for us the first information that it found. So if it found this guy, it will consider him as the only male, and then the rest will be ignored. But you can go ahead and still give conditions. For example, by ordering. For example, I can say order by ID, and then I put desk. So it will begin from what? From descending order. Select all from order by ID desk, not desk. Okay. So if I run it, so you see, it will begin from what? From bottom at this moment. So that is group by. We proceed. We'll use this group by most especially when we are counting. Okay, when we are counting. For example, you can see we are selecting from a specific table, and then we count. Select. Then this is the table name. I mean the row name, the column name, and then you count the number of IDs. For example, comma, count the number of IDs. And then after, you give it the name what it should be considered as, and then you use the left join to do what? To be displayed. Then here it will have select from more different tables as it is counting the number of ID. I don't know whether we looked at count. Yeah, we looked at the count and the what? And the average before. So the count is not new to you. So we go to having. So we use this having clause in the condition, in the where condition, in the where section. Okay, so we use it also when when we are searching something. Having clause has added SQL because where keyword could not be aggregated. Okay, so in case we don't want to use the word having, where we can as well use what? We can as well use the having. So this is how the syntax goes. Select, then you specify the columns that you want to select, then you specify the table and the condition, and then in case you group, you can group, and then you give a condition of having, and give a what? And you give a condition. Then you give a what? For example, an order by, in case you want to. And then, for example, having count greater than 5, then it will have to return the results whose counts are greater than 5. Customer ID which are greater than 5. I'll not concentrate on that much. I'll just concentrate on more important things. Existing, not very important. Insert into and select. I think already done that. Insert. Case, not so important. Null function, not so important. Stored procedure, not so important. Comments, not so important. Comments, just like we use in PHP, but it was not important at this moment. So operators, not so important. Let me see. These are not so important. Just like ors and ands in what? In in PHP. So that is a basic introduction to database. I hope we have already covered the creating the database, creating table, and dropping a table. We have already covered those things. So we are going to look at just concepts of basic concept introduction, just basic concepts of what? Of database. You've learned how to talk with database using the SQL. Now you can go ahead and learn these others, but they're also important. The most important ones, I've covered them. So after learning those basic introduction to SQL, I'm now going to do what? I'm now going to teach you basic concepts of what? Of SQL. I mean of database. Then database is so wide, you can go ahead and learn ahead even of me. But I'm going to teach you basic concept of database. So to learn and understand database, first of all, you must understand what you call the foreign keys. A foreign key. A foreign key, like the way I told you, is an... Let me open here my word. Okay, so a foreign key so when you're creating a table of data, I mean a table, we always do what? We always first define the structure of these tables, because if the structure is broken, then you're doomed. So now I say that when we create a certain table or a certain table, we always give them what we call a foreign key to each record. A foreign key is an element that we will use to uniquely identify a record in a certain table. So this is the structure of a table. A table takes two things. It takes in designing a table, we always consider two things. The table, the name, the property name, and the what, and the type. For example, like I told that you can say here it's an ID, and then it means that ID we'll use it to do what? To identify. So here this ID we are supposed to make it what? A foreign key. So it can become an integer, and we make it a what? A foreign key, not a foreign key, a primary key. Primary key. So a primary key, like I've defined you, will be a property that we will use to uniquely identify this record in a what? In a table. For example, this is a what? So it is always recommended that each table that you create, it must be having a primary key. Otherwise, if you create a table that does not have a primary key, then we cannot we cannot identify each item uniquely. And if you cannot identify each item uniquely, we always consider that as a weak table. It's a very weak table because you cannot identify items uniquely. So to create a strong table, each item you have to give them what? You have to give them a primary key, and I'll show you how to create a primary key graphically, and by just SQL if also you want to do what? To know. So after you give it a primary key, then you have control to identify other elements. It's not necessary that it should always be integer, but it is what is always recommended, and all primary keys always make them integers, and most of the time we always make them auto increment. So for example, assume that you're recording a books database. So we can put here what? A title. So this one can be what? A variable character. voucher, and then maybe you can put maybe 40 or 45. So it means that a title can maybe 2 to 5. So it means that we are going to have a title which is going to have variable character of 255, and then maybe we'll have maybe publisher, and then this publisher will have maybe will have text data type. We already discussed these different data types, and maybe we have book details, and then maybe this one will have text data type. Okay, but how can we uniquely identify this table? I mean, identify any record in the table that you're going to have this structure. We can uniquely identify them using a what? Using a primary key. Otherwise, if it does not have a primary key, you cannot identify them by a title, because possibly there can be more than one book which are having same title, and